Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure to be back in Lebanon. And may I begin very quickly by saying that I'm so happy to be able to present myself publicly here as Wole Soyinka and not as Morgan Freeman. Sweet, I beg your pardon, sweet are the uses of diversity. I repeat that. Sweet are the uses of diversity. Now, many here will have recognized that title as being adapted from none other than the bard himself, William Shakespeare, whose actual words are, "Sweet are the uses of adversity." Shakespeare's lines can be read as a poetic rendition of the inscription, "No condition is permanent," that is often found painted on Nigerian public transport, known as Bole Kaja, a reminder of the vicissitudes of human existence. Taken in the context of the epidemic of abrupt migrations currently sweeping the world, we could do worse than absorb such lines as imperatives for an open-door policy for nations as opposed to the driven impulses of fear, suspicion, and the lager mentality. The immediate obvious virtue and benefit of an open society is, of course, largely cultural, which happens to be my preoccupation. Nevertheless, we must acknowledge that a hermetic consciousness operates on many levels. Some are actually harmless, more or less. Others are decidedly hostile, xenophobic, violent, and dangerous. Even the former, the seemingly harmless, may intensify into the latter. This process is very often easily rationalized. From expressions such as, "Oh, they're coming to take our jobs," or "their influx will put a strain on our welfare spending," we may sidle into, "they will lower our standard of living, they're bound to erase our identity, they will pollute our culture," etc., etc. That is the beginning of a career of demonization of the incoming migrants, the building of walls around them, and a policy of exclusion that results in xenophobic violence and other expressions of ultra-nationalism. My intention is not to expand the moralistic slant on the ever-present warning of a possible change in the human condition, and thus the need to respond to the misfortunes, beg your pardon, of others. Despite that, I'm compelled to acknowledge that adversity may also be an accurate substitute for a reversal, or to put it in more common parlance, falling from grace to grass. And what does that mean in practical terms? Simply that the welcoming doors, the welcoming or, I beg your pardon, reluctant or outright hostile host may become tomorrow's migrant, knocking at the nearest door for admittance. That surely must be lurking within the consciousness of someone, somewhere on this globe, at any time, far more frequently than ever before, and with an intensity that the world perhaps has not known since World War II. Indeed, it sometimes strikes me that blind forces are mustering to enunciate our present as the era of migration for one half of the nations of the world, while the other half is put to the test of choice, whether to shut their gates against the throng or to decide how to manage a diversity that now threatens to become the only authentic identity and the yet unacknowledged destiny of the world. It is not a new prospect. It has merely become accentuated in recent times thanks to a rampage across the globe that gathers strength every day, disrupting, uprooting, destroying, and devastating human existence. And the world seems powerless to stop it. More and more nations will be put to the test, whether to see themselves as pragmatic, accommodating hosts or rejectionists. For some of us, however, there is no dilemma. The choice seems obvious enough, and one basic, practical rationale will be found in those very Shakespearean lines of admonition, which translate very simply as, make the best of your circumstances. Or, if we may call to mind yet another poet as witness, John Donne this time, whose lines are ever ready on the lips of political leaders, but without the slightest genuflection to its inspirational intent. The lines are, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. As well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Substitute nation for man, and consider how literally those lines express the world's migrant dilemma. And we find that there is, in fact, no dilemma whatsoever. Only a question of how to manage those moments of adversity, one in which positions are so easily reversed. How to turn them to advantage, into a situation of mutual benefit where neither host nor guest is imperiled. Such benefits are not immediately quantifiable, but then neither is commerce, easily one of the oldest examples of occupational nomadism that the history of society offers us. Indeed, even till today, some nations are identified, at least in the concept of others, with virtually nothing except trade, buying and selling. Don't take my word for it. Travel the length and breadth of West Africa and ask the average local, in Nigeria most notoriously, not what is the main occupation, but what is the nationality of the Lebanese, and you'll receive the answer, business. Matters have, of course, improved somewhat, I admit, in the past few decades, maybe one or two, but until recently, the average man in the street did not know that there was a nation called Lebanon. They thought Lebanon existed only in the Bible. But they knew that there were people around called the Lebanese, but could not conceive them as having migrated from any land of the living. You could hardly blame them. The Lebanese in Nigeria were not integrated, in fact, in much of West Africa. They made no attempt to promote an identifiable culture. They were simply not interested. They lived in pockets of Lebanese communities, and that was it. Not that Nigerians were critical. On the contrary, Nigerians tend to accept strangers as they are, as they choose to be. Today's picture is, of course, remarkably different. To walk into a hotel run by a Lebanese businessman, he's sitting right here, and find on its reception desk a calendar dedicated to Nigerian literature is a sign of transformation in cultural sensibilities that could not have been imagined even 10 years ago. And of course, only 2 years ago, maybe even shorter, I attended an event right here in Beirut, in which a number of scholars and critics from far and wide participated. That event was in honor of my late illustrious compatriot, the novelist Chinua Achebe. On that visit, I was hosted by a Lebanese businessman, an ex-Nigerian, who had specifically redesigned a wall in his house for the commissioning of a masterpiece by the Ghanaian-Nigerian artist El-Anatsui. And there are other examples. Would these interactions have taken place, however, without the influx of the self-repatriated Lebanese who were forced out of their Nigerian bases by depredations wreaked by those theocratic extremists, Boko Haram, who then returned right here? Would such developments have taken place, one sometimes wonders ruefully, without the life-changing exploits of Boko Haram and allied global afflictions? It does not matter. Shakespeare was right, after all, at least qualifiably. Sweet, indeed, are the uses of diversity. I shall end on that note of sweetness and light, in furtherance of which I shall now reveal the nomination of Lebanon by the Lagos state government in Nigeria as one of the 4 star guest nations invited to the 50th anniversary celebrations of the creation of Lagos State in May 2017. The celebrations actually begin next year, May. We call it May to May celebrations. Well, what's the main motivation? Business or culture, or both? Since culture hardly ever walks alone, well, what does it matter? We look forward to return of the double migrants, optimistically in a condition of a nation freed of that sanguinary pestilence, Boko Haram, and its siblings, those misbegotten freaks who speak neither the language of business nor culture, who detest diversity and convulse over the symptoms of creativity. We look forward to your participation. Thank you.